Wish I would have known. Hi, and thank you for joining the Wish I Would Have Known podcast, or as we like to call it, WIWHK. I'm your host, Troy Vera. I'm inspired by the variety of surprise twists and turns that people have taken in their careers, and will continue inviting them to share their stories with you. Our guests represent diverse lines of business. You'll meet social workers, symphony musicians, racehorse owners, radio personalities, human resources leaders, commercial real estate lenders, filmmakers, and school principals, just to name a few. Join us and hear what has worked for them and what might just spark a fire in you. This podcast, as always, is going to be a conversation between friends and peers, nothing too crazy or fancy. We'll be sharing life's experiences in the interest of helping you grow and succeed in your current or even a new career field. And we're spending the afternoon today with Alan Stanley, and he's going to talk to us about his career as a florist. So let's get to meet Alan.
Well, I'm 36 from Houston, Texas, now living in Austin, and grew up skateboarding and love photography and just kind of fell into my current profession as a florist and learned to love it and loved it really quickly too.
Wonderful. Well, when I was a kid, I was definitely a skater. I would get up in the morning on a Saturday, watch some old classic videos, Santa Cruz skates and Palo Peralta, get all jazzed up on the bus, and go to San Jose when I grew up in
Oh,
California.
wow.
So I imagine in Houston, there was a lot of places, a lot of big curbs, loading docks, and so on. Were you street or vert?
Definitely grew up skateboarding street as a street skateboarder, but as I got older, started to really like vert skateboarding. You know, if you fall, you're falling into a slide more or less. So there's a lot less impact. But yeah, both are a lot of fun. And like you said, Houston is huge. So I had a lot of skate spots. We'd go and in high school, we had one friend who had a car and we'd drive downtown and park and then just skate the whole day around the whole city, for as long as we could until pack up and go home. Yeah, the place is huge.
Yeah, or the security guards would show up and kind of cross their arms and hang out in the back saying, all right, you guys got 5 minutes.
A
Go hurt
lot of
yourselves,
that.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah, I had the skateboarding is not a crime bumper stickers all over my stuff,
Oh, dang. Yeah.
and all those. So what was your favorite company or group or video growing up? For me, it was the Bones Brigade, and then people like Nodis and Jason Jesse over on the Santa Cruz side. So who was your skate heroes?
I got into skateboarding through the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games.
Mhm.
So for me, it was a little bit later. Grew up, watching the Baker guys, Baker 3 and all those guys, Andrew Reynolds and a lot of the guys who were on those video games, the Tony Hawk series.
Mhm.
So mostly those. Think of some other videos, but somebody I really think about now too is Lance Mountain and some of those early curb skating guys and stuff. I think curb skating is really neat.
I remember Tommy Guerrero used to just bomb down the hills of San Francisco and hopping over planters, and he'd get to the bottom of a hill and almost have to hold on to a street sign to keep from ending up in front of a bus or a street cleaner or something. So it was a lot of fun just to be able to go out there, be creative, just kind of do it for your own sake. And me as an artist, and I'm sure you in your creative pursuits, including where you work, you get to do things that express yourself. And sometimes people notice, and other times people just kind of go by and say, that's neat. And it brightens their day. It gives them something different to think about or look at. But creativity for the sake of it, sometimes it's
Yeah.
rewarding in and of itself.
It really is. And something I just to touch on is that, how you probably still to this day look at the world so differently too, huh? When you're driving by and you see a bank or a stair set or some ledge that was never been touched, and you're thinking, man, if the right person was skating this, they could really make it work. And yeah, it's a whole different outlook. And just being able to, like you said, show what you have to offer in your own way, and it's almost like dancing, but not. And so I always love to think about it. If you took the skateboard away, how this person would look, running around and spinning and kicking, without the skateboard there, it's just like interpretive dance. So anyway, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, Fred Astaire with bearings.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so a little bit more about what you do now. So You work as a florist for a pretty big grocery chain here in Texas. Almost everybody, at least in this area, has heard of HEB. And it's one of those places like in Northern California, we have the Nob Hill. And over on the East Coast, I think they have Friendlies and
Right, right.
Publix and a lot of these big organizations where everybody just knows the store. They grew up going there and then eventually aspire to work there. And so I understand that you started with the store in a different capacity. So how did you find yourself working for the company?
Yeah, so originally I was before joining any of the grocery chains or really in the retail space, I was making video games with some guys and we were doing that for a number of years and it got bought out by this company and we couldn't profit quite the same anymore. And so I had to find a job and we just had moved to Austin and Whole Foods was a big thing in Austin. And so I started working for Whole Foods for 3 or 4 years and I was a cashier there. And that was really colorful environment in a really bustling part of Austin, this exciting place for people to move to. Then we moved further from town out in the suburbs and decided to work a little closer to home and just went over and applied to HEB and got the job right away as a cashier as well. So yes, because I had that experience with Whole Foods, they brought me right in and it was like night and day. I thought was so amazing how the company treats their employees and the customers. And, coming from Whole Foods, I thought, oh, am I stepping down? Whole Foods is this really fancier version of a grocery store. And I thought, oh, what is it going to be like? And I was pleasantly surprised. Not only the managers and things acknowledging your existence and whatever else, but the customers were also just more down to earth, more of the typical people you would meet in your life. I guess people were friendlier. The environment was really welcoming. So
Yeah, it really helps when you're supported from within, and people are people no matter where you go. It does seem, even when I go there as a customer, that people are generally typically happier to be there. Could be a suburbs versus big city thing, but I think also there's a situation where when you're with, even though it's a larger company, it still has that grassroots feel. It still has the B of the Butts family. Um,
yeah.
as a tenet of how this company is run. And it's been around for more than 100 years and got to be doing something right. When you were as a cashier and you found yourself getting to know people or maybe helping out here and there or being close enough to some of the other departments, what gave you the inspiration to go over into the floral department?
Yeah, the store I was working at the time, they had just put in the self-checkout. And this store had been around for 20 years or something. And I was one of the first people they had trained to do self-checkout and to try to invite people in to use it because it was new to the area. And there were some people who would come by in their carts and kind of raise their nose at you and say, oh, I can't believe they're doing self checkout here. They're running people out of their jobs as cashiers and stuff. And reality was that the company would just allocate those people, either other places in the store or just have them get more hours day to day. So nobody lost their jobs because of self checkout. Let's be clear there. But what was neat and what was helpful for me was that it was right next to the floral department. And in the mornings, the ladies there would come in and I'd talk to them and get to know them. And they were so sweet. When it came time for Mother's Day and Valentine's, it's such a huge endeavor for them that they have to hire 20 or so employees from the store for a couple weeks prior to prepare all the products and things for Valentine's and Mother's Day. And so they invited me to say, "Hey, Alan, we've been talking to you and we need some help for Mother's Day. And so would you like to help?" And of course I said yes. It sounds really fun. I think anybody probably would. And I helped them for Mother's Day and then Valentine's and then Mother's Day again before they were finally able to squeeze me in to their department. And it was a whirlwind from there. Yeah.
The industry is so interesting. It's very important. I think it's taken the place of even things like greeting cards and some of the other small gifty items because people use flowers to show love, to show support, sympathy. There's so much in this humble thing that only lasts for a little while. Yeah, of course you can sell potted plants, but this very sort of time transient thing that people put so much importance on, and it can make or break somebody's day. So I think it's really neat to be right there at that moment of somebody needs something to show friends, family, coworkers, whatever, an emotion that maybe they can't articulate. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think flowers just more than almost any other little thing, just make somebody that much happier. Vegetarians like flowers. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
if you show up with cookies or or the vegans that can't have the dairy, or you bring a deli tray. There's always going to
right.
be somebody genuinely excluded. But it doesn't matter what walk of life you are, or even what age. If you get flowers, or even give with the goodness of your heart, or the that meaningful sentiment, that can just and change so much. And it's neat that you
Yeah.
get to be right there on the front lines of that. And I can tell, I've seen you at work, and you give great care and detail to the arrangements, or just the department as a whole, to make sure that when people need that, it's there, it's ready, it's well stocked, it's organized. And just like with any other industry, if it's poorly executed, then people probably walk away and say, I'll spend my money somewhere else. I'll just get them an e-gift card or something. But that sentiment is there. So speaking of flowers, are there certain ones that you love to work with? If you could maybe pick two or three that are just your jam. Everybody loves roses,
Yeah.
obviously, but there's the other ones that we may not know about, that perhaps somebody could consider when they're either buying or creating a bouquet for somebody special.
Sure, yeah. There's one I love that you would put in place of baby's breath, because everybody knows baby's breath, and it's kind of like a fallback to, oh, what should I put with my roses? This kind of has the same application in that it takes up a lot of space in between the things, and everything's really small. It's called the Mardi Gras aster.
Mhm.
And it basically looks like little tiny micro daisies. They come in either purple or white, but it's really pretty and especially just happy looking. So I think that's probably one of my favorites. It gives a lot of volume to your flowers. So it helps spread all your roses and stems apart. So it's just a little more airy and it's really beautiful. So those, and in just a baby blue eucalyptus, it's kind of a joke
Mhm.
where customers will come up to the counter and say, "Oh, what should I add to this? What should I add to this, Alan?" And my coworkers look at me and they're biting their lip because they know I'm going to say one thing, and it's the eucalyptus. It always looks good, smells good. For whatever reason, you add it to it and it looks $20 more expensive for only costing you a couple bucks. So those two, I think, are the most impactful I can think of. Yeah.
Very cool. I think scientifically, eucalyptus is also a bug repellent, right? I know,
Probably, I think so. Yeah.
I know it,
Yeah.
it keeps away mosquitoes outside, so I'm sure it does something on the inside too, and which is
Mm.
important if you, especially if you have it in your kitchen or at your table. Who was an important career role model in your early work life? I know you said you went into essentially customer service early on, but was there somebody that you grew up with, a teacher, a family member, a best friend's parent, somebody who just showed you what it's like to work the right way?
Yeah, I would say probably my grandpa was a big influence to me because he had a huge love of art and photography, and he traveled to Saudi Arabia and Russia and all these places and would come back. He'd be gone for a year or two at a time. And so when he came back, he had so much had changed, not about him, but about his outlook, I guess. He had so much to talk about, different languages to speak and all this stuff. And yeah, he just loved to talk to people. He could talk to anyone. He had so much to talk about. So for me, he was a big influence in that way, in that we all have so much to relate with each other, far more than we have less of. So, yeah, I would say him and my stepdad, both very talkative, very friendly. You just feel like you can trust them, and they're just great people to be around. So, definitely those two. And I do have one person to mention that just came a little later down the line in my floral career,
Mhm.
and this lady Christina, because I didn't learn to do, I didn't get certified somewhere. And a lot of times at these places, you learn on the job, on the spot with people. And I remember, well, let me say, Christina was the girl I was going to speak of. And she works so hard. It's just unbelievable. And she would always, no matter what, do a little extra for each person and never in front of them. She would make it special, but not so they would see that she did it,
Mhm.
more that it was selfless in that way, almost like tipping when they're not looking. So yeah, she was really great, really special. Yeah.
Nice when you're around people like that because it inspires you not necessarily to keep up with them in some kind of sense, but live like Christina or
Hmm.
work like Grandpa and just have that internal voice of, what, I'm having a rough day or my lunch kind of sucked. I don't really want to put in extra work, but the more you do, the better you're going to feel. I think that there's an old quote something about courage is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking, and that really goes to that. So as you sit here now, and if you could kind of look back at your 10-year-old self, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to design video games, as most young men my age do, and I kind of am now with some friends, so that we're really excited about that. But I think I never saw floral in my life, but I'm so thankful to be doing what I'm doing, and it's such a blessing every day to be involved in people's lives, like you were talking about. And you see a kid when they're 3 and they're coming back when they're 6 and 7, and they can really articulate how excited they are and the different gifts they are. And so every time people come and they want balloons or flowers or plants, I ask them, what's the for, what's the occasion? And people are so excited to be there because they're giving something to someone, or they feel good about giving. So it's almost as equal as it is giving that person something as it is for them to receive it, if that makes sense. And so they're just as excited as the person who's going to get the thing. So it's such a fun place to meet people because they are in that excited moment where they're willing to spill things because they're in a good mood. They're in a really good mood. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
When I was younger, I had a really nice man who worked at our local grocery store called Albertsons, and he was the front end manager, and he would just be that guy who, if a bagger was out or sick or somebody wasn't there, he would jump in and start bagging up groceries. And as I got older, he I would be like his little helper, basically kind of getting me out of under my mom's elbows while she's trying to write the check and and close out the transaction. And I remember just going to Joe and asking him, even before we even got to the register, I would go find him and say, okay, if you're going to be up there, can I help you bag today? And there was that little level of excitement about going to see, an adult in your life that does something fun, something cool, and they let you be a part of that. And I think other brands, let's say Home Depot, does that really neat where they have a class showing
Oh yeah.
build birdhouses or work a drill. I think it'd be a lot of fun to maybe not where you work now because that's a whole lot of logistics, but do some kind of thing, or even if it's a virtual class, Mr. Allen's flower demo, and I think that'd be kind of fun to express and pass along the love for the craft. So you were saying earlier that you didn't really have official training in the floral arts, but you probably did in video game development and some of those other creative sides. So things maybe not translate over, attention to detail probably would, but in the computer development and the pixel world, is there something perhaps that you wish you would have taken more seriously in school? Was it programming, math, whatever? Is there a class or anything that you would have taken more seriously had you known that you were going to use it all these years later?
Absolutely. I think that for game design, I think when you get to this point and you realize how little people are out there who are willing to learn these languages or even just the 3D modeling or whatever else, no one wants to learn it when you're a kid or when you're growing up. It's all daunting. It's not just you that thinks it's daunting. And so I wish I knew. I feel like when I was a kid, I had so much ego that I thought I was more special and that, oh, I just can't wrap my head around it. No one can. It's the people who are trying to that are doing it. No one is just this all powerful master. And yeah, they know a lot, but I'm still sure that they're going to be super critical of themselves, even the best of the best. So that just shows you that you really just need to get your feet wet, no matter what the capacity. So I think that there's no excuse because there's so much free information out there for it's not, you don't have to spend money. There's all these classes and tools for you to learn all kinds of things. And this could be in floral too. I was the same way in that, oh yeah, I can do the, I'm not going to watch videos or any traditional training and stuff like that, which could have helped a little bit. But for the game design thing, yeah, I think just get out there and do it. Try it a little bit. And I wish that I did, because I waited a long, long time. And then like I said, I get to this point and realize, wow, nobody here is really confident. And so it's okay to not know everything.
Yeah, one of our previous guests had a really neat perspective to share. He's in the affiliate marketing world on the side, and in his own sort of personal life, he's a marathon runner. And we got talking about just the whole idea, something that is so intimidating that you never think that you could. And some people do a couch to 5K or whatever that might be. And knowing him for almost 15 years now, it was really neat to hear his perspective about it. May be cliche, one foot in front of the other, keep your pace and all that, but it's only impossible if you haven't even tried. Somebody else has already done it. I mean, there's been game developers since the 60s when they're
Yeah.
designing the UI and the UX of basic computers and other interface tools. It's really interesting to hear the perspective of somebody who wanted to do it for a long time, did it, and now said, why did I wait?
Yeah, it's just like you realize, oh, it's not that much. The mountain was not that steep. It's just long.
Doing web development for so long, I kind of get that too, where you decide and you create packets or groups of things. So you don't have to render an entire character all at once. You render the arm, and then you let that arm do certain movements and certain actions on a pivot point or an axis. And then once it does it, nowadays, back in the 90s, even we had tweening. It was this where the 3D rendering engine would take one position here, go 30 steps the other direction, and it would kind of fill in the gaps on the wireframe. So you didn't have
Oof.
to render all 30, the tweening would do it. Old animators probably had the same thing where they just used more of a blur rather than defined movements of each of every single line. And after a while, the human eye and the human mind kind of give in and fill in those gaps for you. So to be not so granular about all the little ins and outs and the details. As far as gaming goes, that's a wonderful expression of creativity. Skateboarding obviously is. There's a degree of chaos in
Yeah.
both. So much can go wrong. But in your daily work life, working with flowers, I think there's that more, it's delicate, and there's a certain way you have to do it. You may have some flexibility and creativity to do it, but if you don't, this will die. I think there's a little bit of that finite aspect to it that probably keeps you a little bit more grounded, and it's a good balance.
It is, and it's difficult too, because like you said, it is based like there's interpretation, and so it can be difficult, and someone comes up with a whole bunch of different things, and maybe things that you wouldn't pair together, and they say, "Can you put this together and make it look gorgeous for me?"
Mhm.
And you're like, "Oh, yes, I can. I would love to do that for you." And that's something I learned too, is just that you have to be confident, and your confidence is gonna make them feel comfortable. And so when no matter what somebody comes up with me, they'll say, some guy will say, I want $150 arrangement. It's my anniversary. I only have 15 minutes. And I say, I'll do it. I'd love to do that. And so like just the confidence of it's like tricking yourself in a way. But the interpretation part is a difficult aspect, especially when we're dealing with brides. We do big weddings, events and stuff into the thousands of dollars worth of flowers. And some bridal bouquets are 300, $400 just for the one thing that she's holding. And it's for the most important day of her life. And you have to make it right and not fall apart or wilt or so there is that aspect. But I think with this job in particular, you get to kind of a plateau or a point where you're confident in just about, anything people could come with you. And so it wasn't until I worked as a florist for maybe 2 years did I get to that point where I thought, okay, no matter what someone comes up and asks me, I'm going to be able to do that for them and feel good about it.
It's a good segue into our next question about, the methods that you do at work. What's something that is not a norm, but works for you? Maybe not give away too many tips and tricks, but is there something that just a little out of the ordinary that kind of has that Allen stamp on it? Maybe like the blue eucalyptus. Who would have really
Yeah.
thought of using it that much? But is there something that is just a go-to? I know this is always going to work. This is my thing, foolproof. Do it, and I promise it'll work.
Yeah, there's a certain combination of flowers, that'll just about always look good, and we kind of all have our own little recipes in the back of our mind that we can just kind of go to, that it's safe, because we want everything to sell. You still want to be artistic in your own way a little bit and kind of challenge yourself, but you can't make anything too funky that people aren't gonna buy, and so it is a delicate dance in that way. And there are some things I think that I do different from other people, especially that aster flower that I mentioned before as well, because it just holds everything. And when I do teach people how to make bouquets and stuff, there's a bunch of different ways. 10 different florists will teach you 10 different approaches, and some will say never to use shears and only use a knife. And some will say every arrangement, you're supposed to make it in your hand like a hand tie and then put it in the vase. While some others, they'll put things in the vase one by one, stem by stem. So, no, I think most of my signature things would be hard to tell and better to show, but something I do differently from a lot of my coworkers, and something that I'm trying to kind of get put as a actual thing that HEB does, is flowers for kids, where if we have an arrangement or something that goes out of date and we can't sell it anymore, that we would cut the flowers down short and then have them on our desk with a little sign that says free for kids or kids at heart. And that way people leaving the store, I do it all the time now, and I got the okay from our boss and her boss's boss and stuff. So, but it's as people are exiting the store, and so all day long, well, for as long as we have these little flowers out, it's never very many, thankfully for us. We don't have to throw out too much stuff. We have the flowers out, and all day long people will go by and they're, oh, Chris and Emily, do you want to get your little flower? And they'll run over there and they'll take their time choosing the most beautiful flower, and then what do? They immediately run over and hand it to mom. They want to give it to mom, as this is what and mom, oh, you're so sweet. And then they put them in the little chair, in the little seat in the shopping cart. A 3-year-old is there, and the little kid's holding onto a rose, and mom takes a picture of him and stuff. And so it's just unbelievably wholesome. So I think that would be just a great way to get rid of these flowers that we can't sell. And it's almost like, advertising, but also just brightening people's day. And it's been really successful at our store, and it just warms your heart beyond belief.
Yeah, that's awesome. It changes the way somebody frames their day. They could just be having a totally rotten day. They're a little good-hearted kid, grabs them a daisy or a rose or whatever, and boom, it's instant smile. And that's phenomenal that something so simple can
Yeah.
change the way people are. So if someone is going to be aspiring to be in the field of what do you call it? Florist, floral arts.
Yeah. Florist, I think.
Okay. Somebody wants to be a florist. What's something that they should avoid or ignore, even if it is a popular sentiment? I might go to that. There's really no right way or wrong way to do it, but is there something that you kind of turn off, even when you hear it?
No, it's hard to say, because there's so many approaches to this industry, but I think it's the opposite, in that you should be open to everything, because you'll be surprised. Our store in particular is a trainer store, and we have people come and stay with us for 3 or 4 months who are looking to become floral managers and take the next step in their career and go from just partner or employee to a manager of their own store. And so over the past 4 years, we've had 5 or so people come and then graduate to being a manager and getting their own HEB store and their own floral department. And every single time they come in, they teach us something new, and they have their own little way of doing something. And we thought, I never thought about that, and you're just always baffled that they could think of something. So, no, I think you should be open to everything and don't be closed-minded, because I think in the floral world, people are very closed-minded and kind of stuck in their ways of like, oh, this flower only looks good with this, or has to be done this kind of way. And there's a million kind of avant-garde styles for this kind of thing. So I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, but it's that same way with people who are in the chef world or even as a musician. One of our previous guests was a symphony musician, and she was saying that sometimes a little flourish here and there away from what is planned can change the way a piece is heard and interpreted. So it's great to buck tradition and put your own fingerprints on it. Of course, respectfully. As the title of this podcast hints, what did you wish that somebody would have told you in the past so that you can be a little bit more successful or maybe at peace in your career?
Maybe just that confidence is just about everything. I think just being confident in yourself and knowing what looks good. You know what looks good, right? And just going with that confidence because it, like I said before, it translates to the customer. When you feel good about it, they're going to feel good about it because they're trusting you in the first place to make something special for them. So I think for me it was a confidence thing.
Good. And to that end, what happens when you have to encounter somebody maybe who's having a bad experience? How do you deal with somebody who comes to you and says, I don't like this, I want you to do it again, whatever? How do you deal with that pushback?
It can be difficult, and some people, for whatever reason, they aren't so pleased. Maybe it's just difference in opinion because so much of this is subjective. Thankfully, I don't have too much of that problem, but I have experienced in the past. And so, really the best you can do is ask, okay, well, I'm happy to do it again. I'll love to do it again. And just ask questions about maybe they can help articulate what they want changed specifically. Or for the most part, we do everything we can to make it right. And we want to make it right. And some people are a little more particular than others. But at the end of the day, we're more than happy to either do it again or give them something free or whatever we can do to just make it better. Because either they're in a pinch because a lot of people are waiting to the last minute to get this thing for somebody. So they're already stressed out about it, or it's for something, more sentimental than they're willing to tell us. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I don't pry, especially when somebody's having a hard time with whatever we've made for them. I just try to make it right.
That customer service ethic that I think is it's in your bones. You really care about people and you want to see them happy with what they get. I've worked with the public for a long time too, and you just have to chalk it up to you can't please everybody. But I think for the most part, using that diplomacy and that professionalism and not meet them where they are as an angry person or dissatisfied person, take the L, whatever it takes, get your manager involved. I think that's a little bit of that protection that you have working as part of a large store rather than, let's say, you have a standalone stall or a shop that you are the sole proprietor and the buck stops here. And I think it's a little easier to go into a conflict when you have at least the corporate layers of protection, that if somebody wants to act a fool, you're not there in front of them wondering what's going to happen next.
Absolutely.
So, is there a quote, a bumper sticker, a t-shirt, something that just you carry around no matter what, no matter where, your go-to sort of guiding quote?
Well, yeah, actually, there's something that I tell every young person who comes into the store and they're getting flowers for something, or just anyone that is still learning much of the world. Something that I wish people told me was the best advice I have to give you is to listen to advice. Because maybe it was just my generation, I don't know, but I don't know. It just seemed like growing up, it was always anyone who was your elder was like, it was almost like they're a joke. And it was like it was always the butt end of the joke is the old guy or your grandpa or oh, kids, and shaking their cane at you and stuff. And reality is they're just like you. They lived life before you and could teach you a lot. And so when we all get older, I'm sure most of us have thought, oh man, what they said was true the whole time. Oh, I had kids and oh, the years go by so fast. Everybody says that. Why? Because it's true, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I just wish that I took in advice more. And I think as a society, as Americans, we should exalt advice and people who have that experience and the wisdom much more than we do now.
Yeah, I think the prevalence of the throwaway phrase "Okay, boomer," and
Hmm.
me as a Gen X, I could kind of literally say that to somebody who was maybe older when back in the 80s or whatever. But now kids
Right.
just kind of say it as a coverall. You could
Right.
be in your 30s and they'll bust out with "Okay, boomer." Like, wait a
Don't
minute.
even know the origin of that
Yeah,
term. Yeah.
they dismiss the wisdom.
Hmm.
I grew up with the whole like respect your elders. And then we would push back by saying, well, they have to earn our respect. And that went a little bit more of a devolution where TV and movies and commercials, the adults were always the butt of the joke. Like you said earlier, it's just sort of the clueless dad or the mom who was kind of a square. And oh, the kids know better. I'm gonna go hang out with my older brother and his idiot friends in the garage, and they're going to tell me what life is all about. So yeah, valuing the wisdom of somebody who's been there before, made some mistakes, I think could definitely take a lot of people really far. So in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see yourself doing? Are you going to continue within this field? Of course, not tipping your hand if you have big plans in play, but what do you have in mind that you'd like to do?
I would love to stay doing exactly what I'm doing as a florist. I think I'm so lucky to be involved in so many people's lives in this area of town, and it's really exciting every day. I haven't had a single day really where I go into work and feel like, ah, I gotta go to work, because it's more so that I'm just helping my friends. All my coworkers are such close friends of mine, it feels like, and they're all so wholesome. And then all the customers are so wholesome, and people all day long will walk by and wave and say hi to us. And there's people who are there almost every day I'm there. I'm there 5 days a week, and I see some customers almost every day that I go in. And so for them, it is this like constant, and we're like a constant in each other's lives, and it's reassuring and comforting just having those repeat interactions and that kind of consistency in my life. But like I mentioned, I'm working on a video game with some good friends of mine, and we're hoping to have it fully released in maybe 2 years or so. We had a free weekend play test and had 20,000 people log in and make an account.
Nice.
And we're super excited about it. It's pretty much all I do after work. I go straight home. I work on this video game and give my wife as much attention as I can. So it's a little balancing act, but it's a lot of fun. And I think in 3 to 5 years, I'm hoping that this game is out and I'm a florist still and have a little extra cushion to send my family to the Cayman Islands. How about that?
Yeah, all right. Sounds like a good aspiration. So it sounds like you have a really good support system around you. And I know I'm blessed with a wonderful wife, and she probably gives you the encouragement and maybe even some of that good direction to keep you focused. Because as somebody with a creative mind and a noisy brain, sometimes my wife just says, "Okay, I see what you're doing, but why are you doing it?"
Hmm.
And is it going to frustrate you? Is it going to waste your time? Are you just going to walk away from it in a few months? Do it as it makes sense. And sometimes I just have to get something out. Just figure it out, do it, start an Instagram account, and then just let it die off and close it out later on because I had my fun with it. But it sounds like with the game design, it's really in you. It's part of your DNA, and I think that's pretty cool. So going back to the games, what's the game that really drives you? What's the thing that you played or maybe look to and say, I want to design that style, or I want to render the story and create something in such a way? Was there one that you always popped in and played obsessively and studied to the pixel perfection?
Yes, 100 times yes. And I
Mhm.
could talk for hours, but it's a game called EverQuest, and it came out in 1999. It's kind of the grandfather of the MMORPG genre. If you know, like World of Warcraft is an immensely popular game where you pay for the game and then you have to pay $15 a month just to play it. And hundreds and millions of people have played it, millions, I should say. of people have played it. And but EverQuest was World of Warcraft before World of Warcraft, and it was a really, really special game in that it was just one big open world where you could go and find other real people wandering around and talk to them and group up together and kill monsters. But it was just such a social thing that as a kid, seeing it for the first time was just mind blowing in that I could look into my computer monitor and there was a whole nother breathing, living world of people running around inside there. And people got married on EverQuest. They met their spouses there. Some people spent more time in the digital world than they do in the physical world. And that's truer more now than ever with some of these games. And so the game we're working on is largely inspired from the 1999 EverQuest, and it's a slower pace than the current genres are. And it's really meant to just kind of bring people back together and take the time to talk to one another again. And it's really cozy. But yeah, EverQuest for me has got to be the one of the best games ever made. Yeah.
You mentioned the acronym earlier. So MMORPG, or otherwise known as Massive Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. Some people get into the tabletop ones also, game systems like D&D and a lot of those other ones. But a lot of that comes down to that storytelling. And people don't fancy themselves as writers, but when they have something else that kind of wraps around what they have to do, it's amazing what you can just create on the fly as you're trying to advance a story or create a narrative or develop characters. And kind of what we're talking about earlier with, if you're doing something you don't think about it, you almost get more out of it because you're not straining. You're not trying so hard. If you sit there with a blank piece of paper and say, oh, write a story. But if you tell, okay, here's your prompt, and you can be 8 pages into it before you know it, and your hand hurts and it's 2 a.m. and next thing you know, you've got a whole storyline or a new module. So I bet the writing part really takes a lot of energy and part of the process too. It's not just creating the look of it, but the why behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really special, these games. And I think they don't get quite as much attention. People write them off as these people just vegetating. They're just
Mm.
playing these games for hours and not showering or whatever else. And this is something I was telling the guys the other day when we were working on the game, is that we have almost 20,000 people already who are interested in playing, and we haven't made like a single YouTube video really that shows off the game. And it's just all word of mouth, and there's a lot of people that are really excited. And so I kind of told them that we're not just making a game for these people, we're making it like their new home. People spend 5-10 years playing World of Warcraft and these other games. They meet tons of people and they're on voice chat every other night talking and grouping up together. And so it is a part of their lives. And so like for us, it's motivation to get it all done, knowing just how many people are going to be affected by it or meet their friends or just have memories. Or we've even had people share screenshots of the little playtest we've had where it's a dad who grew up playing EverQuest as well, but now has a son or a daughter, and they're playing this new game together because it's like the game that dad grew up with, but it looks like the games that his son is used to playing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this new blend of kind of the old and new that we're really excited to have people just kind of make memories together with.
Yeah, nostalgia is a really strong fuel for getting somebody to do something. And everybody loves the 80s and 90s and all, but even just that, the nostalgia within a genre. I'm a sports card collector, and we still trade players from 60s and 70s and 80s and get excited about when we get one, even though they haven't played for forever, but you have those warm memories about the game, the people, almost even just like the society that it creates. That Second Life, Sims, all those other ones where somebody gets so deep into it that they can't imagine themselves not doing it. So that's really cool, being a world builder. Now there's a young man who is kind of in my family that is a map builder. And
Oh,
I was thinking, oh, he's studying cartography. But no, he's doing these virtual world video game maps at a very large scale. So he was always really quiet, really introspective, spent a lot of time just programming and learning from a very early age. And now he's in his early 20s. And, that's going to lead to a really interesting a career direction for him because just like with explorers back then, people have to know where they're going and how they're crafting their digital world. And without a map, you're just kind of wandering around, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking this whole time we could use him. Honestly, because one of the big facets of our game or something that we champion is we have a map, but it doesn't show you where you are on it.
Hmm.
Like most games, they'll show you exactly where you are, and if you move, the little arrow moves. But we want it to be like a paper map, and so that you have to use, frames of reference and stuff to find things. So, wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, well, that's the wonderful thing about this podcast. It gets people connected. So offline, I'll pass his information over and see if we can get something out of it. If not, just at least a brainstorm session with him and give him a boost of confidence that the work that he's doing maybe in his quiet space can really help advance the gaming world. So as we're wrapping up, are there any services or books or resources in your industry that you think that people should subscribe to or follow or use as research? This is more on the floral side of things. Gaming, that's, tomorrow's going to be different. But with your work as a florist, are there things that is there like a physician's desk reference of sorts for that? Is it a botany guide? Are there things that you should and could have on your shelf or even in your phone now?
I think YouTube has so many great. I've been introduced to a couple different YouTubers. I'm not sure I know their names off the top of my head, but there are some florist only YouTubers and they're really amazing. And there's guys who are in Australia and they have just this ridiculous repertoire of plants you've never seen before and it's pretty neat. There's a guy in the UK that's really funny. But specifically HEB, if you're interested in being a florist, I think if you're in the Texas area, that HEB is a great place to do it. And it is difficult to get in these departments because it's such a small team. You're maybe 3 to 5 people, and a lot of them don't want to leave. They love their job, but you can do what I did and just get in the company in some capacity because HEB will almost always prefer to hire within the company if you're already on board, you already know all the systems and stuff. And so a lot of times they'll hire people who have no experience with flowers and stuff. And yeah, just be inquisitive and be a go-getter and you can really just do whatever you want as long as you want it enough, right? So
Yeah, motivation takes you far. So what's your work language? Things that mean the most to you, how somebody can connect with you, learn and grow and just align. For me, it's respect and understanding, and then a little bit of the recognition, sort of a pat on the back for good hard work. So what's your work language?
for me, it's like I prefer like an unspoken kind of work language. So it's all these subtle things like if one of our employees is talking to a customer and the customer says, I want this many balloons and this as well. And while she's talking to him, one of us will turn around and already be printing out the tag for the girl who's talking to the customer. So she'll turn around to print the tag and we'll be standing there and hand it to her and waiting because we're just always looking out for each other in some way. So I think for me, it's those little things like, oh, you go to the restroom and they swept up real quick while you were gone because you can sweep without your feet in the way and stuff. Or it's just all these little things, which I think kind of amounts to respect and just keeping a clean workplace. For me, that's a big thing. And we have something like 20,000 customers a week in the store or something. And so I want to treat the behind the counter like an open kitchen.
Mhm.
And people are walking by and looking at it and I don't want a single stem on the ground if I can help it. But I'm not that strict. I let them fly and everything, and we're super reasonable about that stuff. But it's just the respect thing of cleaning up after each other and being there, anticipating each other's needs. I think is for me number one.
Being cautious and careful and professional. Because, like you said, you are kind of in a fishbowl where most floral departments are situated in a store is on the way in or on the way out. So you don't have the opportunity to cut up and goof around and mess around with each other, you have to be on no matter what because you're representing the store, the brand, and you're there under the microscope. So when it's time to take off the apron, hang up the shears for the last time, what do you have in mind when it's time to retire?
Oh, when it's time to retire. Wow. Oh, well, I would love to. I've been wanting to build a costume before I joined this team to make the game. I was working on a costume for the Renaissance Fair, where a little backstory here was when I was a kid, went to Disney World, and in Animal Kingdom, there's this lady they call the Green Lady, if you're familiar, and she's on stilts, and she has stilts on her both of her legs and stilts on her arms that reach all the way down to the ground. So she's kind of quadrupedal, I guess. She's got 4 points to the ground, and she's completely covered in vines and leaves and things. I mean, her face is painted green, and she's so beautiful, and she will never look at you. It's pretty incredible. She somehow can look everywhere but at you, and she's just so ethereal and magical. As a young kid, I was just spellbound by this creature in the woods. And so I thought, wow, and especially after seeing Lord of the Rings, I thought, wow, I want to make a costume where I'm a treant, like in the Lord of the Rings, and go to the Renaissance Festival and just excite people the way that I was excited as a kid. Because when I was a little younger and went to the Renaissance Festival for the first time, the Texas Renaissance Festival is huge. And I was walking around, and there's tons of people dressed up in all kinds of cool costumes and things. And I asked my grandpa, "Oh, do they work here or something?" And he said, "No, they just showed up like that." And I thought, wow, how cool is that? That this is a place that anyone can come and make it that much more exciting and memorable. And we kind of all have that freedom to make it a really special experience for each other. And so I just wanted to be a part of that. And I think, yeah, if I can do that, even as an old man, I would love to do that.
I had an art teacher when I was in college, and he passed away after I'd already moved. But I heard at one point from one of his family members many years later that he had left me a sword because he was part of the SCA, or Society for Creative Anachronism, which is basically all of the immersive, before cosplay was a big thing. And to have that connection to the Ren Fair folks and just the people who are just wildly creative. They don't mind suspending reality for a little while. And I know some guys who just walk around and like every day is Ren Fair. They make their own rings. They craft knives. They do metallurgy and chainmail. I mean, they are really, really into it. It just becomes part of them. Much like your digital world, they're kind of going back into that ye olde world. It's cool to see people embracing that, and you can get lost in anything. You get lost in food and movies and other pursuits, but when you're that into it, it really helps kind of guide your life and gives you something to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I pretty much see you weekly when I go over to the store, and I can't wait for this to come out and people get to know you. From all over the world. We've got people who listen to us from everywhere, but especially some of the local folks. Thank you again for taking time to enlighten us with your experience and sharing some inspiration. This has been Troy Vera from the WIWHK podcast. Join us again, and we appreciate your time.
Awesome. That was fun.
Wish I would have known.